Cast Commander is seen by the general Battle Cats audience as a ripoff of its inspiration, as it comes a few years after Battle Cats. They both have cat in the title, and the gameplay looks kind of similar. But really, these games couldn't be more different, and frankly, this Battle Cats inspired game is pretty solid. But can it rival Battle Cats? And should you play Cast Commander instead of Battle Cats? Before we really get into the answer though, here's a verse from the Bible. Proverbs 2:2. Tune your ears to wisdom and concentrate on understanding. Is CTC bootleg Battle Cats? No, Cast Commander took a very different approach to the mechanics and general gameplay, though some ideas like metal enemies are straight up taken from the original game. Overall though, there are just too many major differences that make categorizing CTC as a bootleg version of Battle Cats unreasonable. Differences: battle mechanics. The way your units interact with enemies in both games is way different. In Battle Cats, units will stay there and attack, and they'll either take damage or not take damage from the enemy depending on their range and a few other abilities, and this simple system can get very complex very quickly. But in Cast Commander, units fall under one of 5 categories: tackle, bow, magic, charge, and support. Tackle units run into enemies, and usually they'll knock enemies back while also being knocked back themselves. Bow units shoot over most enemies and hit at a generally specific point. Magic users shoot an explosion straight forward, and charge units usually shoot an extremely specific point consistently for high damage. And finally, support units buff your units. Knockback is way different in both of these games, and really it's what defines them. In Battle Cats, your units have a set amount of knockbacks, and if they are or aren't knockback depends on how much HP they have. In CTC, ranged and support units work like this, but commonly for tackle type of units, they'll always be knockback and knockback enemies once they run into them, and both will take damage. If they are or aren't knockback depends on if they have penetration or not, and if they're knockback in the first place depends on the tackle type of unit. Defending the base is also different, as Cast Commander uses a fixed 3-hit system as opposed to Battle Cat's base HP. In Cast Commander, there's also no enemy base, and your base can either be hit by tackle types of enemies or magic ones. Due to these mechanical differences, things like meat shielding and using mid-ranging strategies and spamming kind of don't work in CTC due to the aforementioned reasons, and because cooldowns are overall pretty slow in CTC. And likewise for Battle Cats, you can't reasonably send out a single unit to consistently defend a large stack of mid-rangers or change your cat's weapons if you're fighting a different element. Traits. Speaking of traits, Cast Commander and Battle Cats treat traits very differently. In Battle Cats, specific cats target specific traits, and they can do a massive variety of things. From slowing to knocking back and to having more HP than usual, the customization and fine-tuning you can do depending on your situation is pretty crazy. Cast Commander simplifies this down to traits being stronger or weaker than another, as in fire deals double damage against wood and fire does half damage against water. The only specialty in this are the light and dark traits, since they deal double damage to each other and have no weaknesses. Because of this, CTC has way less variety than Battle Cats when it comes to dealing with traits, and adapting your loadout for different stages isn't really necessary a lot of the time. Having a single strong fire type like Bishamon against a wood stage and no other fire units is probably fine if everyone else is solid, and the only issue is if water enemies are fighting you. Though, if you're using your strongest units in general, you'd be covered by everyone else. The weakness part isn't even an issue for light and dark units, as they're just as strong against each other. So overall, having a general loadout for every stage is probably always better than ones that can counter specific traits. It's the opposite of Battle Cats, as in the later game, you'll have to start customizing loadouts heavily and using specialized cats, be they Ubers or regular units. Because of this, Battle Cats forces you to get creative with units you've been using forever, and even though that means there's technically not much variety in what you have in Battle Cats, because of how stages are constructed, it makes it feel like there's far more variety with how you deal with threats. PvP. Battle Cats, as you know, does not have a PvP system, though Battle Cats Unite on Switch does, which is irrelevant right now. But honestly, given how insane the balancing of the game is, I'm pretty thankful for that. It probably wouldn't be very fun to fight against pay-to-win Uber spammers. Since CTT is also a gacha game, you'd probably assume that it'd have an issue like that, but actually it's very fun. I don't have much to say since I didn't play it all that much, though the unique, limited abilities your cats can use from battle to battle add a lot of spice to fights. And given the battle mechanics, it actually leads to strategizing a lot on how you can defeat your enemy in the best way possible, because your enemy is also human. Similarities. At the end of the day, Cast Commander is still a game that's inspired by Battle Cats. So naturally, like any game that has some level of inspiration, there are similarities to what inspired it, though they're not really major. Gacha system. Both games are gacha games, though Cast Commander's non-gacha options and units are usually good enough once you buff them, meaning that CTC's equivalent to Battle Cats Ubers, the ultra super rares, aren't that important to get. What I already have with my units that I've gotten naturally by just playing the game and occasional gachas just work well enough. This is kind of night and day with Battle Cats, as Ubers are far more useful and more people prioritize getting them. Summer Satoru, Mega Aphrodite, and Dazzly are units that people feel tied to for certain situations once they get them, and it's possible that a lot of the time you'll be using all of your cat food over and over to make that 11 draw for that great Uber Legend Rare that you really want. Possibly later in CTC, I'll feel as if I need to get these ultra rares since I'm rank 26, which is not that far in the game. But hey, I've been doing absolutely great with these low to no gacha loadouts. Medals. Medals in CTC are basically lifted from Battle Cats, though when they're in a stage, you get a message before you enter the stage that says medal alert, so you know to bring units that can crit or to use a crit fruit item which increases all of your units' crit chances by 2%. Medals are flat out put into the game better. Unlike Battle Cats, you won't be blindsided by medals in stages since you're alerted of their presence before the stage starts. But also with an item like the crit fruit, you can at least up your chances of getting rid of medals. Medals are alright in CCC and they're definitely the most memorable type that I've encountered, but I'm not excited or anything whenever I get the challenge of fighting them. Treasures. Both the games have the treasure mechanic and they both suck, though they both have very similar mechanics that make it a bit easier when you need to max them out. From time to time in Battle Cats, there will be treasure festivals that increase the chances of you getting treasures, usually throughout entire chapters that have treasures, and more occasionally for specific stages. In Cats Commander though, there's basically always a treasure festival or treasure fever going on all the time. The only catch is that it's always for specific stages, as in one stage will have a treasure fever out of any of the other ones. Though, treasures are acquired at a 100% chance each time you beat the stage in ascending order from worst to best, meaning that you'll get bronze on the first clearing with the treasure fever, silver, and then gold on the last clearing, or silver to gold if you started with silver. This makes collecting treasures infinitely more annoying in Cast Commander, though the game does give you the option to buy hidden treasure fevers for 77 gems, and once you use it, it gives you a guaranteed 30-minute treasure fever on all stages in the main story. If you have the gems in time, then farming is pretty easy. Aside from that though, as I said, it's extremely annoying. And that's kind of it. Aside from obvious similarities like how the events work, the fact that gotcha-less cats exist, the upgrading system, and a few other things, the game stands well on its own. Calling CTC a ripoff or alternate version of Battle Cats isn't on the same level as calling Terraria a ripoff of Minecraft to be sure, but I wouldn't say that reducing the game to a ripoff of Battle Cats is justifiable given all the gameplay differences and everything else. Misc. Here I just want to talk about both my issues and other aspects of Cats Commander that are important that wouldn't really fit into any other part of the video. Soundtrack. The game's soundtrack sucks. They went for what any show or other game goes for when they don't have an idea for creative musical direction, so they default to orchestral tracks that you've heard 1,000 times before. This is totally at odds with Battle Cats, which not only has a distinct musical style, but it uses their main theme repeatedly in creative ways. CTC's soundtrack is also unfitting for the kind of game it is, and given how honest and creative it is despite the clear inspiration from Battle Cats, that's an absolute shame. It sucks that if I put it on in the background, it feels as if I'm watching an isekai anime while doing homework. Honestly, as soon as I started the game, as in when I first installed it, I muted it so I could listen to interesting videos instead. And though I do that with Battle Cat since I've been hearing this soundtrack for years by just playing the game, me being able to simply watch interesting videos as I play the game gets into what changes the game from a tower defense like Battle Cats to effectively an auto game that's occasionally challenging. Auto Battle. The CPU in Battle Cats functions as a way for powerful players to grind out weaker stages for materials, or stages where endurance is important and the strategy just becomes spam everything. You never use the Cat CPU in order to sit back and beat every stage without touching the screen, but in Cats Commander, Auto Battle functions as an infinite, toggleable Cat CPU and it's really good. It prioritizes basic defense, summoning ranged units, upgrading the wallet, then throwing out as many units as possible once it's maxed out. Though it's basic, this just works most of the time because of how the battle mechanics in single player stages work, as tackle types of units last long enough to be sent out alone, meaning that unless the stage is a bit stronger than you, strategy isn't really needed. This means that stages on your level, or of course less than your level, can be beaten with general ease and maybe a little manual aid. I think I'm more mixed on this than anything. Effectively, when doing main quests or event quests, if the stage is on your level or lower, it's an idle game. It's a game where you sit back, wait, and improve your stuff, and though you can definitely use your skill to optimize your ability to beat stages, and sometimes you probably have to, it just boils down to unnecessary work that could have been done by auto battle while working on a project, doing homework, or really anything else. Idle game. All of this means is that the game effectively has no real strategy outside of PvP. And as I said, this is without mostly high value gacha units, and this kind of undermines every other aspect of the game. If there are unique enemies that knock back your units in unique ways, or have some strange movement or other gimmicks, then I won't appreciate them as much as cool units in Battle Cats because I could just auto battle and ignore it to some degree. Battle Cats beat CTC in this way, as since enemies are always reused, they have to all be very recognizable and different. You already know what Master A will do, and you can probably assume what Dolphina may do on a stage. All that really changes is their magnification and how they're used in tandem with other enemies in the stage. What also helps the uniqueness of each and every enemy in Battle Cats is the fact that there are no hard rules for how they have to be constructed. The range, attack animation, and all the incredible abilities that are in the game gives the developers a good chance to make enemies and cats in fresh and unique ways. In comparison to CTC's 5 categories of units, there's only so many ways a game can really change things up in a way that's noticeable. Sometimes maybe an enemy has a cool gimmick, like not taking knockback as usual, having higher than usual defense, and having strange movement. Like undead enemies have very high defense, fast, powerful attacks, and the ability to walk backwards, and medals are medals. But it's all undermined because of how auto battle works, so none of this comes into play noticeably. So, Battle Cats or Cats to Commander? It's not definitive, which sounds insane as a Battle Cats YouTuber, I know. On the surface, they seem similar, and Cats Commander definitely took a lot of inspiration from Battle Cats, but the two games are fundamentally different in many ways. But they're also really good, and so I think it depends on what you want to go for. If you want a more casual sort of background idle game with occasional, mostly optional challenges and a sick PvP mode, then go for Cats to Commander. Though if you want a unique, challenging, and extremely long tower defense experience while still being pretty casual, then go for Battle Cats. Strictly, which one do I think is better? For me currently, I would say Cats Commander. Sounds insane, but hear me out. But not for directly gameplay related reasons. As a person who's pretty busy with work or my own creative ventures and improving them, I don't have all the time in the world to focus on improving where I am in Battle Cats, as my life doesn't revolve around this game. And recently, I've been preferring the more relaxed, idle nature of CTC over the more difficult, strategic, and intense stages in Battle Cats. It's nice to sit back and let the game play itself as I improve my units and watch informational videos. I personally suggest you try Cats Commander out, as you might like it. Just don't pay too much attention to the poor English. Be sure to subscribe, like, and of course, read the Bible. In fact, before we close out, here's another verse. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, do not depend on your own understanding. Goodbye everyone, and have a good rest of your day, and join the server, why not?